Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to CCA's 2019 Mobile Carrier Show. I'm Steve Berry, President and CEO of CCA, so welcome. We'll give everyone an opportunity to come on in, get their plates full. Just keep on eating. Don't worry about what I'm saying. I'll be a loud voice up here. It's great. It's a great pleasure to be here in the Mile High city of Denver, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to our event. Whether you're returning or are a first-time attendee, thanks for coming. We appreciate it. I also want to thank for those who are joining in our webcast partner is RCR Wireless. So thank you, RCR Wireless. It's already been a very busy few days here in Denver, and thank you to everyone who participated in the fun run and walk on Monday. If you weren't there, you missed a great event. Hopefully you'll get to hear about it. But those who did come and support, we were able to make a $5,000 donation to the Food Bank for the Rockies. So thank you to everyone that participated. And believe it or not, Stephanie Manley, who runs the program, for $5,000, they will make 20,000 meals. So great organization. Thank you. For those who also attended the grill last night, thanks Sprint for hosting the dinner last night. Very good, Sprint. As usual, there's a lot going on this show this year, and I strongly encourage each of you to take full advantage of downloading our mobile app for the latest updates. You can also fill out the session evaluations on the mobile app, which is extremely helpful for CCA and the information we glean from that. You can also fill out the evaluations, which will give you points. This year we are fully mobile. We're going green and going mobile. So please get the app. Please use it. I will mention that the top 3 most active users will win great prizes. So including a round trip plane ticket on Delta Airlines to anywhere in the continental United States. And there will be some cash awards also. So make sure you utilize the app. Help us. Let us know what your assessments are. Before we get started, I would like to extend a sincere thanks to the Pinnacle sponsors who actually helped make this event possible, as you know. So Ericsson, Huawei, Interop Technologies, and Nokia, Sprint, T-Mobile, and TNS. Thank you so very much for your support. Now, before we get to our keynotes, I would like to make a few brief remarks on some of the important work we do, CCA does in Washington, D.C. It pleases me to say that CCA is known as the go-to source for policy issues, not only for competitive carriers, but also for the telecom industry as a whole. We are very proud to be widely recognized in Washington and beyond as a strong, a very effective voice for all of our members. And without your support, this would not be possible. So thank you, the members, for making us relevant in the halls of Congress and the echelons and the corridors of the FCC and all the other administrative offices. And while policy advocacy remains our main reason for existence, the board also acknowledges that CCA in fact has 3 main functions: policy, education, and networking. And if I will, I'll start on education. This year we're particularly pleased to place special emphasis on the educational work. One good example would be just today, we are pleased to announce a new partnership with Award Solutions to create a special training and certification program. Our carrier members asked for more training opportunities, and we're delivering. The program will provide individuals with access to certain self-paced and instructor-led training courses led by Award Solutions, a CCA member. The first training topic is 5G. We kicked things off this morning at 9:15. Well, Award Solutions interactive session on 5G integration. And I encourage you to look into the excellent course selections and provide these exceptional educational benefits to you and your employees throughout the entire year. I should also mention that CCA will recognize individuals who complete the course at our annual convention this fall in Providence. And so I look forward to working with Award Solutions and providing more valuable training courses in the future. So get involved, take full advantage of this unique opportunity and special pricing. Next, networking. In addition to our 2 shows, there are many other opportunities for members to connect. As you know, this is a great facility here. I hope you're making the connections here. But we also have other committees available for members. Some people always said it's like a gym. If you use it, you get benefit out of it. If you don't, it's your fault. I think it's your opportunity to come join us in some of our events. Events committee, the associate member committee, the Washington Reps group, all available to all our members. We also have some carrier-only event groups, Business Innovation Group, or the BIG, as we call it. And also we have the Washington Week. So June 17th through 20th, where CCA members will take their issues to Capitol Hill. And so you should plan on joining us June 17th through 20th in Washington, D.C. These committees all exist to enhance the CCA member experience. And for example, the BIG is a carrier-only group that identifies carriers' highest priorities and challenges, which we then make available to all our members, especially our associate members. And the Washington Reps group, which is open to all members, establishes CCA's policy agenda for the year, which is later approved by the board. Other essential CCA networking opportunities include our carrier-only CFO meetings and our CMO meetings, our roundtables. Great opportunity to share information. They have become a regular part. I'd like to thank Jackie Mallory from Carolina West that heads up the Chief Marketing Operation, and Ben Pace, who chairs the CFO group, and you'll hear more about those as we move on, and hopefully you too can have somebody join these highly talented individuals in their roundtable sessions. So thank you, Ben and Jackie. Big round of applause for them. Both of these groups are designed to create interaction and share our experiences and provide more information to all our members. And the valuable input we get from them helps us form all of our associate members' activities also. So we share those priorities with our entire membership. I think it enhances your ROI. So as an associate member, if you not only benefit from the networking opportunities, but we hope you also gain additional information and important insight into your target audience. As we continue to work in these areas, we are focused on the fact that wireless is a rapidly changing world. And vendors and carriers are connected and concerned about many of the same issues. The work we do at CCA is aimed to keep you informed, keep you connected, and keep you competitive. The CCA board has made it very clear CCA's mission is to continually adapt, evolve with the market, and meet our members' needs. And the last, briefly highlight policy and advocacy. As you know, policy is CCA's bread and butter. It's why we, it's why we exist. Our advocacy work continues to be driven by major issues familiar to all of you, but let me just briefly mention 3. First, spectrum. Everyone knows competitive carriers must have access to low, medium, and high band spectrum and to provide robust services to their customers. We're all over that on a policy issue. Second, infrastructure. Infrastructure has been the backbone of the wireless networks. Having a clear, streamlined deployment policies in place is necessary so our carriers can actually build out and enhance their networks. We've had some major successes on that this year. And third, Mobility Fund 2. We continue to work to ensure that our carriers have access to this important support program, and without reliable data and eligibility maps that are accurate, rural America risks being left behind in the digital world. Matter of fact, our own Tim Donovan, our Senior VP for Government Affairs, is testifying for the U.S. Senate tomorrow on this very topic. And I don't know if you get up early in the morning, hopefully we'll have some live streaming of the testimony. For more details on these and other policy issues, I strongly encourage you to go to the breakout sessions, the policy breakout sessions, take a deeper dive, learn what we're doing, and tell us how we can do it better. And please get involved. In fact, you can get involved right now. Everyone, please take out your mobile phones. I know everyone has a mobile phone here. So you take out your phone, you sign up right now to receive an update from CCA about our policy initiatives by texting COMPETE, C-O-M-P-E-T-E, to 52886. That's COMPETE 52886. The text response you receive will have a link, and you click on that link and you enter your information to take action. This is very easy to do, only takes a minute. I think you see even I figured it out. So we would love to have you, everyone here, join and support our cause. Again, it's COMPETE to 52886, and be involved in our activities in Washington. Thank you for participating, and we really do think your input and your participation makes a difference. And please know that you can always talk to me, any of our staff, our policy staff. If there are issues you want to know about, please walk up to us and tell us you need more information or you'd like to talk to us. So we're more than happy to do so. Now I want to turn to our panel. I thank you, T-Mobile, for sponsoring today's event. We're delighted to have with us a panel of outstanding women leaders in the wireless world. I call it the Power Panel. And leading the discussion is Kelly Hill, Executive Director, or Editor, for RCR Wireless News, where she reports on network testing and measurement, and as well as big data and analysis. So please join me in welcoming Kelly Hill and our entire Power Panel. And I'll turn it over to Kelly. Kelly?
Thank you, Steve.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it.
Sorry, last but not least.
All right. I think we're still good. Yep. Oh, here we go. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. And we have all of our panelists here.
Sorry. Wardrobe dysfunction.
All right. Full house. Well, it's wonderful to see everyone. I am going to get started with introducing, each of you are going to introduce yourselves. Your name, your company, and a few high points from getting you where you are today, so that we've really, CCA put together a great panel today here, guys, and so let's hear from them on how you got started. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Michele Farquhar. I am the leader of the Communications Practice Group at Hogan Lovells, and also the co-leader of the Global TMT Industry Sector Group. And I can assure you that managing lawyers is not fun or easy, but something that needs to be done. So a lot of my work is in the administrative area, but I also work on a lot of legal projects. And I've been in the industry for just over 30 years doing wireless work primarily. That includes spectrum and new technologies. And it's been a lot of fun because it's been so new and evolutionary over that time. And I started off in government working at the FCC for the General Counsel's office and one of the commissioners. Then I went over to work with Tom Wheeler when he first got to CTIA as his first head of law and regulatory affairs there, which is a very interesting platform. Then to NTIA to be chief of staff and deputy. Then back to the FCC to be chief of the wireless bureau, where I got to know Kathleen. And then went to Hogan Lovells. So it's been an interesting period. And some of the issues at the FCC in particular that I worked on were some of the very first spectrum auctions, working on the Telecom Act of '96 and implementation of that, and also working on spectrum flexibility, which was really important when the FCC moved away from command and control with respect to spectrum to allowing more flexibility in spectrum use. And then I also worked with the industry, especially this industry, on several initiatives. One was way back when I first arrived at Hogan Lovells, and that was wireless eligible telecommunications carrier status, the very first universal service funding for wireless carriers. I worked with Western Wireless as they became the first ETC, which was a bit of an uphill climb. It was state by state, then with the FCC, but we got there, and it really opened up the floodgates for universal service funding and really changed a lot. And then another more recent initiative, and I worked closely with Steve Barry on this, was 700 megahertz interoperability. And that really showed the power of devices and that platform as being something that hadn't been watched. It was more viewed as an evolutionary outside of the FCC's regulatory purview, but very important. And that was a really fun issue as well.
Okay, Kathleen?
Yeah, thanks. Michele was one of my first bosses, so it's nice to be on a panel with her. Thanks to CCA for this panel. I think it's a great opportunity for women to share a little bit of their backgrounds. I got started, I actually went here to the University of Colorado undergrad. Graduated from the journalism school, which no longer exists. It tells you how old I am, but and was interested in the intersection of media, communications, and then eventually law. I went on to law school. But I was a newspaper reporter for a while. That was an interesting experience. And then I worked up on Capitol Hill for a couple of different congressmen and a U.S. senator doing media and press. And then went to law school and wanted to really become a communications lawyer. And I ended up actually doing labor law at a law firm for a while. I was starting to really kind of like it. And then I bumped into a friend of mine on the street who worked at the FCC and who I'd gone to law school with. And he got me an interview at the FCC. And I ended up, at a time in my career, very young. I had 2 small children. Working in the government seemed like a good place to be. And gradually, as Michele can attest to in the government, I think you get a lot of responsibility handed to you if you're willing to take it. And they eventually, there was a new program that was starting at the FCC, spectrum auctions. Congress passed a law and said there shall be spectrum auctions. And they started out a new group within the FCC, the auctions division, and there was, they offered the job to 3 people before me, and I was stupid enough to take it. I ended up running the early spectrum auctions, so the PCS auctions that ran so well, and we had no idea what the valuation of this stuff was, but it ended up being a very successful program. I got promoted on up to being a deputy bureau chief, and during this tenure, part of this tenure, I worked for Michele, who was the bureau chief. And then I had a boss by the name of Tom Shagru, who was a real mentor to me. He was one of the bureau chiefs that I worked for at the FCC. He left the FCC to run T-Mobile's government affairs office, and he worked me over multiple times, multiple lunches, trying to convince me to leave the government and come work for T-Mobile. And that was 15 years ago. I've been at T-Mobile 15 years. Actually, I think I just surpassed the amount of time that I was at the government now being at T-Mobile. So, and Tom was a great mentor to me. I came into the company at the time. We're all talking about 5G now. Back then we were talking about 3G. And T-Mobile was just trying to get the spectrum that it needed to get to 3G, the AWS auction, and my auction experience and so forth was really, really helpful to the company in that. And then we got the spectrum we needed, and then we had to get the government off the spectrum because they were occupying it. And so we spent 2 years really clearing a lot of meetings at the Department of Defense, a lot of meetings at the Department of Homeland Security, clearing the spectrum. So, and then, it was a small team back then. The company gratefully promoted me on up to a vice president and now senior vice president running the government affairs office for T-Mobile. And as you can imagine, I'm a pretty busy lady right now. But I have a terrific team, and I see some of them. Some of the people from T-Mobile who are here, stand up in the audience. I know. Don't be shy. Stand up. So I have a terrific team. Many of them are here in the audience, and so I couldn't do it without them. Anyhow, thank you.
Great. Maureen.
Hi, I'm Maureen Moore. I'm the Chief Customer Experience Officer for GCI. I began my telecom career with GCI 22 years ago, and like the women on this panel, we all started working when we were 9. Telecom Doogie Howser. For those of you that don't know much about Alaska, we are a facilities-based quad play provider based in Alaska. We have 2,200 employees and just under $1 billion in revenue, and we are unique in that our revenue 50-50 split between consumer and business. So we do a fairly significant B2B business in addition to a significant consumer business. I began my career actually as an internet marketing manager, and I will definitely date myself with this. My first project was to roll out dial-up, and you'll remember the dial-up used to come on discs, and that's how we all got our internet, and then went from there to the speedy, fast launch of 256 cable modems. Remember that? Also huge. And then over the years became the overall VP of marketing, so took on all of our products and services, and then retail operations, and then 14 years ago became Vice President of Consumer Services, where in addition to marketing and retail, I took on operations outside of Anchorage. So I had field service and technical people as part of my team. And then 4 years ago, GCI decided to put a focus on customer experience and created this position that I'm currently in. And so I've had the pleasure of helping shape and define our overall customer experience strategy for the last 4 years. And I'm also on the CCA board, and I'd like to sincerely thank all of you for attending this event and certainly this session. It is definitely a pleasure to be up here among these people.
I'm Amy McCune, and I'm with Ericsson. And my current role is our operations officer for North America, with responsibility for everything that's day two. So once the infrastructure is built, my team takes over from there, running, operating, and troubleshooting our networks. I will tell you that I have been in this role 3 weeks. And as many of you guys in the audience know, my last role was a customer-facing organization that cared for many of you in this room, our regional carrier operators who are super important to our business, and that I have a real passion for your success in this space. And I've learned a lot with and through working with many of you these past 3 years, and really have enjoyed my time on the board as well, and getting to know so many of you in this room. Prior to that, I've been with Ericsson for 5 years. I have quite the non-telecom background in that I have come from the consumer products industry, first with the Gallo Winery, the Miller Brewing Company, and then PepsiCo. So over a beer, I'll tell you more about how I ended up here. But suffice it to say, it's been a wild ride, and the opportunities have presented themselves. And as we were talking earlier, I've chosen to get on the bus many times, and I'm thrilled to sit here on this panel with you ladies today. Thank you.
And Lauren.
Hi, I'm Lauren Wallace. I run a team of business and legal affairs folks that negotiate with cable networks to help build out the media play for T-Mobile. We're part of a division called Home and Entertainment. And I'm new to T-Mobile. We were a startup called Layer 3 TV based in Denver. I joined in 2015, and we sold the company to T-Mobile just over a year ago. So what we do on a day-to-day basis, when I put it into layman's terms, is I say I fight with Fox and HBO to keep your cable bills down. And people go, oh, yeah, okay. So we're primarily licensing the right to distribute our partners' content and work on creative ways to bring new products and services into T-Mobile and the suite of what we bring to customers. It was an exciting time to join because very shortly thereafter, the announcement and discussion around 5G has really pivoted the way we think about how we bring television into our home. Before that, I was at Dish Network, pretty much doing a lot of the same things. I spent a lot of time working with the media sales department, so learning advertising and ad tech. And before that, I was at a law firm on the East Coast.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to start off with diving right into policy and asking each of you, what's the most critical policy issue that's facing your company today? Michele, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I would say some of the ramifications of digitalization, and it affects law firms in different ways, but it's behind a lot of the transactions that we work on, and we do a lot of cross-border work. So The other issue is the trends towards nationalization, which we see with Brexit and the EU going in one direction and the US going in different directions. So trade has become a huge issue, privacy and the different schemes for regulating privacy, as well as cybersecurity and different ways of looking at that issue. Those are going to be three very important issues moving forward, and the impact of how we look at this massive rise of new platforms, including the convergence of 5G with the tech platforms and media with the tech platforms. So we're gearing up for that. We already have a lot of work in that space as we help companies, almost on a global basis, get ready for the future.
Okay. Kathleen?
Yeah. Well, I think spectrum policy is probably number one on our list. With my team, we spend a lot of time on that issue. It's actually what's driving our merger with Sprint, getting the right spectrum assets of low, mid, and high band spectrum are going to be critical, I think, for 5G deployment. And, you know, we're really competing with the rest of the world. It's not just our own little, you know, geographic country anymore. And so, so getting those spectrum assets right, I think spectrum policy is really, really important. And it is a global effort. I also would just say I think privacy is going to continue to be a big issue, and one that certainly we're engaged on, both at the state level in particular. I see some of my state team here, and at the federal level. So I think privacy is going to continue to be important.
Okay. Maureen?
For GCI, without a doubt, it is around the uncertainty and lack of predictability in regulatory policy. We face it on all fronts, as do many in this room, whether it's permitting or small-scale deployment. And in our case, in Alaska, we rely heavily on the Universal Service Fund, and the uncertainty around that causes an impact to the way that we look at how we do capital investment, which has a long-term impact on rural Alaskans. And in case you don't know, we have geography challenges that most others do not face. And so when there is a focus on rural, it's fantastic, but there are many times unintended consequences that impact Alaska differently than other places. And so without a doubt, that's our number one policy issue.
Siting. Today, there's roughly 300,000 sites according to Ericsson estimates. And as we march forward on this race to 5G, there's going to be a need for roughly 1 million sites. And the pace with which we can construct new and co-located facilities is going to become ever more important. And if you think about us in a global sense, in the US in particular, and the competition we're in from an economic position, you know, comparatively speaking, we're behind. If you look at China, since 2015, they've spent $24 billion more than us on telecom infrastructure. According to a recent Deloitte study, for every 10,000 people in China, there's about 14 sites. In the United States, anybody want to guess how many sites for those same 10,000 people? Less than 5. That's 3 times less, yet we think we're going to need 3 times more sites. And so our ability to get with the times, and while I think there's been progress, it isn't, you know, fast enough, I believe, for all of you to be successful. And a particular pain point right now that we'd like to see more movement on is with federal facilities, not just federal land, federal buildings, but federal lands, which I think really impacts a lot of the folks here in this room. Think national parks, national forests, and the ability to provide seamless coverage and the amount of time that takes is onerous. And I think it impacts our ability to provide the right level of service to the communities we serve and puts us behind in the global race to 5G.
And Lauren, do you have any different perspective on what policy is meaningful for your corner of the company?
Anything related to television distribution or broadcasters is what my team is focused on keeping up with. But from a practical standpoint, you know, when Kathleen mentioned privacy and you kept saying uncertainty, I've noticed that the thing that's slowing down or making it difficult in a deal world is the uncertainty around a lot of the new privacy regulations. And companies are moving quickly to keep up, but it's hard to get past those concerns when you're working with big tech giants and you have your own massive infrastructure and you're carrying a lot of the information, right? So that it's kind of similar, but in a practical setting, how it can slow down or make much more challenging what we're doing on a daily basis.
Okay. So I have a quick question for our audience. Of the women in the room, how often, if you've ever been the only woman in the room, raise your hand at a work meeting. Actually, I can't say that. For the men, how often have you been the only man in the room? There's a couple.
That's because he works for me.
So obviously we have an all-women panel here today, and I'm wondering if any of you can give some real-world examples of times that there has been, real value in having a diverse set of perspectives at the table. I don't know who wants to jump on that. Amy, you want to jump on that?
I'll give an example. It pertains to myself. Nicholas Heveldop is our president and CEO of North America, and on his leadership team, there's roughly 15 of us. And on that leadership team, I bring a unique perspective. And that perspective is the fact that I've actually worked for an operator, and that the rest of the team has not worked for an operator. And so my ability to help the team think through when we're talking about technology, and we get so excited about, the technology and networking, and we all talk to the CTOs, that in a pragmatic sense, if you boil it down, our job is to help deliver solutions to you guys that make it easier for you to have happy customers that you can keep, that you can get more customers, that you can drive ARPU value that's seen as a value to your customers, and how our technology can help with that. Think about like dynamic spectrum sharing, for example, and all the goodness and excitement that brings from us as an organization, and we want to talk to you about it. But why does it matter? It matters because as we march towards 5G, the ability for your customers to seamlessly move from 1G to the other and have a super good experience is going to be super critical. And thinking about it in that terms, I think, is a different way that I bring perspective to the leadership team. It doesn't really have everything to do with the fact that I'm a female. It has to do with a difference of experiences.
Absolutely. Kathleen, you wanted to chime in?
No, well, I am lucky to have a team of people that bring a lot of diversity to the table, my government affairs team, and I think they sensitize me all the time, every day, to issues, policy issues that are important to different segments of the community. And so I value that advice greatly. It's my job to try to take it back and funnel it on up inside the company. And sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't, but I think it's very valuable input that I get from my team.
I also find, and this is just a quick one, that sometimes people from diverse perspectives will help you find the side doors and the back doors to get into the room because they're used to doing that. So they're always looking for that extra way to do it. And for policy advocacy, sometimes the door looks very shut at the beginning, and you need to find back doors and side doors, or the person in the room who is the real decision maker, who may not be realized is the one with the outsized influence, who really knows the problem, is the one who's going to solve it. Finding that person and finding the way in is sometimes really important.
Right.
So let's take a second and ask, what is each of your companies doing to diversify the viewpoints that are available inside the company? Whether that's, race, gender, age. Obviously there's a question of experience too. So can you talk a little bit about, what your company is doing in this area? And are there things that apply sort of broadly to, whether you're looking at, millennials and Gen Z as those folks start to come into the workplace? What are some of the things that are maybe broadly applicable to just getting a broad range of folks in the room?
I know our law firm has made it a real priority, and what they found is it's more than just recruiting, but it's also mentoring and supporting and training while people are at the firm. And it's very hard because a lot of women and minorities are also being approached by companies and others who want the minorities and women to work for them. So they get pulled in different directions, so you have to make it very appealing. So over time, I've watched our law firm become a more appealing place to work just in general because we've had to become that way. And that's been a positive development.
Yeah. And I would also add, do you ever think there's a gap between sort of the intent of some of these programs versus the reality that comes out of them?
Well, I think for T-Mobile, we're very dedicated to diversity and inclusion. We have a group at the very highest level of the company that is engaged on this. We also have various employee networks. We have a women's leadership network, for example, that are run by the employees and I just this morning met with some of the members of the local chapter of the wireless technology group, Women in Technology, and learned a lot about what their backgrounds are and so forth. And so a lot of this really is bottom up. It's energized from the employees who care. And I think, for our perspective, we want to make sure that our employees reflect our customers. We have a very diverse customer base. We want to have a diverse employee base. And I think that you mentioned millennials and the like. They really value companies that have values that care about diversity. So diversity is really important to recruitment, and it's something that is a real priority for our company, I know. In terms of a gap, we can always do better, I think. And I think the hardest piece is sort of funneling it up in the organization and making sure that in the highest levels of the organization, you're truly diverse. We have 3 women on our senior leadership team, but it's still, there are a lot of, no offense guys, there are a lot of white males out there. So we do need to continue to work that process, and I think you can do that through mentoring, through trying to bring people along in the process. I think the company's also gotten a lot better about promoting from within. I'm an example of promotion from within. And so I think, yes, are there gaps, but people are working on it. And that's what counts, I think.
Okay. Maureen?
Yeah, we also have a focus on diversity and inclusion. And 3 years ago started the GCI Women's Network, also known as GWEN, which, though focused on women's issues, is really open to all employees. And we get probably about 25% attendance from our male colleagues, which is great because it's educational all the way around. I agree there's still a lot of opportunity there. I think we're making some steps in the right direction, but still opportunity to improve.
So I feel like at its core, it's culture, dialogue, and sponsorship. So you build a culture inclusive of diversity, which I've never experienced one like T-Mobile's created. And I think, I think as a company...
See the colors we're wearing?
Yeah, as a company, we still
magenta.
think that we have a long way to go and areas to focus on, so we're constantly driving that. So culture that welcomes diversity, and gender diversity is just scratching at the surface. It's just one aspect of it. So dialogue. Dialogue is incredibly important. Both, I heard a great tidbit the other weekend at a panel that our local WIT chapter put on, and the speaker said, press your recruiters to bring you a diverse set of candidates. When I see homogenous hiring happen throughout a company, which I saw companies where I joined was number 30 go to 200, and I saw a range of types of hiring among different groups, and when you don't have diversity, it's usually because you're not really pushing for a range of candidates. So dialogue with HR, dialogues with your team, dialogues about bias, all those things help reinforce culture and the openness. And then sponsorship. It's not the most impactful sponsors I've had have not been the strongest women. In fact, to the point of what some of were talking about, there aren't always a lot at the top to sponsor you. Every man in this room can be a sponsor of strong females, and that makes a huge difference and helps encourage diversity and dialogue about these things. So those are the 3 that I think are really core if you're trying to implement something without having the resources to put on a full-blown organized program.
Yeah, and I think it's more exciting if it is organic and it comes from the employees. Like the Women in Technology group is totally organic, and they're doing some great stuff. So I
I do think you're right about it being from the bottom up. At Ericsson over the last couple of years, we have roughly 7 employee resource groups, and they're the typical things that you think of: women,
Right.
African American, but we have Veterans Alliance,
Right.
we have our Next Gen, they refer to themselves, and just last month we kicked off an Asian ERG that was their desire to kick off that ERG. And I think what's great about it is it brings and calls attention to diversity and the value of diversity, and it also allows folks to ask questions and understand about people that are different than them in a more safe way, because culture is super important today, and not just today's workforce, but tomorrow's workforce.
Right.
Super keen on their decision-making process to be around a culture that they want to be part of and feel good about. And that means an inclusive, diverse one where the value of diverse thinking and experiences is valued. And so we're really attuned to that and working at it. And sure, we have a lot of work to do, but I see a real commitment on our part to that. And to your point, just along the lines of ensuring that open positions have a qualified, diverse panel of candidates is super critical. Not super easy, but
Yeah.
super important to changing the game.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to work at it. It's not, I think you really have to be proactive in going
right.
out there and getting talent. It's a very competitive world right now for that talent. And so you really do have to work at it.
As you can imagine, trying to recruit in Alaska
I was
is
just going to ask you about that.
very
because-
challenging, and
Yeah.
it's twofold. One, our population base is just over 700,000, so the pool is small to start with. And then when you're trying to convince somebody that it's a great idea to move to the Great Icebox in the north, that can be challenging. And when there is a robust lower 48 economy, which there is right now, that really hurts us. It is so competitive in this part of the country. It is very challenging for us to recruit people to Alaska. But one of the things we've done along the lines of focusing on hiring is we now, for director level and higher positions, those are all done by an interview panel, which is diverse. So it's diverse across the organization, and it's diverse in gender and other things, so that when we're looking to hire people, we are hiring them into the culture, and it's a broader group of people participating in the hiring process, which is definitely helping.
Right.
And I'll note that back in January, 170 general counsels from companies sent an open letter to law firms saying that future legal spend would depend on having a more diverse set of lawyers working for us. So that sent a real wake-up call to a lot of law firms that, boy, companies are serious about this, and we have to bring to pitch meetings and put on our panels and also bring to client meetings a diverse team. That's really important for our clients.
And that, to that point, in legal services, for example, that is something that we look at. I mean, it's not just internal. As you look at, contractors and the like that you hire and their practices, and are they having diversity as a priority? And that's certainly the case with the law firms that we're dealing with. And Hogan Lovells has really been a leader in this space. And every year we give a law firm an award for championing diversity. And they were the very first law firm that received that award from us. So I think that's important too.
Great. So along those lines, I'm wondering if, for those who would like to answer this, if you could talk about times when maybe your path to where you are now, might have been different than a male colleague's in the same. Under
Well,
the same
3 kids will do it to you. That's different. I had 3 small children, and I was juggling, and at the same time my career. I tried to do part-time at a law firm for a while. That was really a joke because I ended up working, I was being paid part-time, but I was working, 6 days a week. And then I figured out I'm kind of getting screwed here. So I decided to go back full-time. But I think that I was very lucky to have a husband who's very supportive, and at one point he started working out of the home as a consultant, and that enabled me and my career to progress. So, but that, I think juggling of childcare and, now I see, I'm a grandmother now this year. I now have 3 grandchildren, and I'm seeing my son had twins, and I'm seeing him trying to juggle he and his wife working, and they're very lucky to have me and my husband, and they're other grandparents around, I didn't have that. So, that's very stressful, but somehow I look back on it and I got through it. But that's, I think, something women, I think, uniquely have to deal with that. So.
Well, having worked with Kathleen during that period, you would never have known. She was one of the hardest working people in the Bureau and often turned out the lights, I think, in the agency at the end of the day.
Yeah, my husband would call the security guard at 2 o'clock in the morning and want to know where I was. So,
Maureen, you wanted to chime in there.
Yeah, I couldn't think of anything when this question kept coming up that would be appropriate. But I'm serious. But you kind of, just something clicked. I remember it was when I was in a law firm my first year, second year, really early in my career. Like Kathleen, I was working 6-7 days a week. There were a lot of us at the time because M&A was going up and, people were working crazy hours. And I started to have some frustration with a particular partner and I couldn't figure out what that was. And I realized that if the guys were out on Friday afternoon, my peers, or they were not reachable over the weekend because they were playing golf, everybody got that. And they were questioning my priorities and demanding that I explain them where they weren't doing that with my peers. I haven't really experienced that repeatedly throughout my career, but it was a great learning experience because there was a female partner that was the head of the group, and I asked her to help coach me through how to handle it. And that really taught me to go to a leader, male or female, and seek advice on those types of challenges and how to handle them. Because really what I walked away with was one more tool in my toolbox to handle difficult situations, and they keep happening. They happen for all of us. So that's the only one I can really share that makes sense.
For me, I would tell you that male colleague, female colleague, all of our paths are different. And it's all about what we choose to do at the time that the opportunity is there. And I feel super fortunate that I feel like I've had a really amazing, successful career in a variety of different industries. And it's all about, I think, the choices that you make and how well you do what it is that you do. And I don't think we're unique in the fact that maybe some of us work 6 or 7 days a week because we're female. I think there's many of our male colleagues that do the same. There's a DNA that leads to success, I believe. And if you perform well and you deliver at or above your results, typically opportunities are going to be afforded to you, or you're going to see opportunities and you're going to go take advantage of those. And I feel like for myself personally, part of it is just my DNA and what I've wanted to do in going out there and taking advantage of the opportunities that I saw or had, and feel like I've done fine. And I think, if I were to offer advice to, women, it would be that. It would be do your job super well, deliver at or above the expectations, understand that there's not just one way to accomplish or have an end game, that there's going to be a myriad number of opportunities that come your way. If the door opens, consider strongly walking through it, even though it may not have been on your list of things. And I think about it from the terms of a professional sports team. The coach, the manager, their job is to hire the best athletes. Your job is to be the best athlete. And if you're the best athlete, they're going to want to pay you good money to come play on their team. And so I would suggest that women in particular need to be willing to put themselves in the game. I think all that advice that I just offered up was gender neutral to some degree, except for the fact that I would add that for women in particular, let's say that there's an opportunity and they look at it and they say, oh, there's 10 skills I have to have. Well, a woman typically goes, I think I have 8 of those 10 skills. Yeah, I'm not qualified. Now, I would argue or suggest that the same male colleague would look at that and go, I think I got 5 or 6 of those traits. I'm good, put me in. And, time and again, women are unwilling to put themselves forward and put themselves maybe a little bit over their skis. And it oftentimes takes encouragement from somebody to get them to get in the game. So I would suggest be willing and brave enough to get yourself in the game. You own your career. Nobody else does. It's your responsibility, so step in.
Michele, I think you looked like you had some thoughts.
We talked a little bit before about an article I read in the New York Times, so I think that's excellent advice, and that's how I've traditionally thought women get ahead or anybody gets ahead. And then this article in Sunday's New York Times is called "How Old 37 Is Depends on Your Gender," and it has an interesting quote that says, "Promise or potential itself is linked to gender. Research consistently shows that in American workplaces, women tend to be promoted if managers see them perform well. Men are promoted if managers believe in their potential to do well. They expect women to prove themselves first." And I think that really goes to women needing to believe that they have potential, and our male colleagues seeing that potential in women. I think that's really important. And it's another way of looking at the workplace and some of the issues that women sometimes have, feeling like they have to perform super well to get to a certain point, as opposed to having their potential realized before they've gotten there. So I think it's something to keep in mind.
Maureen?
I do think there's a pitfall to that concept that I, in the last couple of years, have been encouraging people to think about. Definitely do the best job, go above and beyond, put in the 100+%. But there's a point at which you need help. And women tend to want to handle it all. Historically, we do a lot. From working to kids, listen to the stories. I don't even know how Kathleen does what she does. But you'll see men move up in organizations and build teams. And I've talked to women who are moving up, and I'm saying, well, build a team, you're working 14 hours a day. And they don't want to ask for the resource. And that can be a pitfall, because I imagine there's a lot of people out there going, I'm doing that. I'm doing a stellar job, and everyone appreciates my stellar job, and they know I'm great, but I'm not going anywhere and I don't know how to get there. So being able to recognize when you need to start to add to doing well by asking for what you need to do even better is an important part of that if you're in a position in your career where you're transitioning to management or leadership.
Yeah, I do think women have a hard time saying no. I know I do, and my staff probably suffers for it. But because you do, I just want to help. I want to move things forward, and a lot of times, you have to really, I think, put in limits. And not to stereotype, but I do think men are a little bit better at that, at putting in limits, than women are. And so I think, but I also think, when I was in the government, and Michele can attest to this, a lot of women managers in government, and they get a lot of responsibility. And I think women are really good managers. I think a lot of it is because of their traits as a woman, and I think that's an asset, and we shouldn't be afraid to be women and to manage like women, and so that's something that's been successful for me, I think, and as times are changing, I think men are more sensitive to that. And I had an exchange with somebody, I won't say who, but I got really mad because this person wanted to exclude a woman from the meeting because they thought she was too talkative. And I blew a gasket. I was like, whoa, would you say that to a man? And so you have to, I think, make sure that people understand and respect that it's okay, I think, for women to be women, and to have the traits that they have, and the assets that they have that make them, people that people want to relate to. And so anyhow, it's I think worked for me.
So I'm going to, I think we have time for some substantial answers to maybe one or two more questions, but I think in the past year to 18 months, we've seen the Me Too movement have some impacts in a lot of different industries. I'm curious as to whether any of you have felt that that is something that has been relevant to you or that has impacted you in the work that you do.
I'll jump
Amy?
in. So I'll tell a story. It was early 90s, and I was working for the Miller Brewing Company. And I was given the responsibility to manage independent distributors, 9 of them in the state of South Carolina. And these were family-owned businesses run by fathers and sons and brothers and uncles in the Deep South. And I quickly realized when I walked through the door that I was probably the first female that had done something besides make coffee and copies. And I quickly realized they weren't quite sure what to make of me. And so I saw it as an opportunity to think about how I could make this a really good situation for them and for me. And I chose to be very clear, both verbally, but probably more importantly, non-verbally, with how we could probably have a good working relationship. By how I dressed, by how I ran the business, how I was an advocate for them, how I didn't get intoxicated at events. If I was at an event and somebody chose to be intoxicated, how I would politely excuse myself. And I never had any issues. And I did hear other female colleagues that did, and I would ask them, did you take responsibility to make it clear what was okay for you? And I feel like I left that setting in a better place, and so did they, because I think they learned that the world was changing and how to operate in that world.
The men
that I worked with.
Place.
Yes,
Okay.
talk about being the only female in the room in the beer industry in the Deep South. And you know, I will tell you that till this day, I mean, people say, oh, can you believe the few women? I'm like, oh yeah, nothing compared to the 90s in South Carolina and the beer business. But I will tell you that to this day, I feel comfortable and confident in saying I've never had an issue. I'm not suggesting that there have not been instances that are damaging, inappropriate, but I also struggle with the fact that how can you now say something happened a decade or more ago? It'd be like your boss saying to you, no, Kelly, that thing you did 10 years ago, that project you messed up, that was a disaster, and so you can't get the promotion today. Like deal with it then or move on, because I feel it has a negative impact on my ability to be successful at what I do, and for other women, particularly younger women who may not be as comfortable and confident, I think it's negative. And I go back to, I believe that there's an element, not that it's 100% foolproof, but there's an element of responsibility and choices that we each make as individuals that make a big difference.
Thoughts from
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with a lot of that, and I don't know. It is important. It's an important movement. It's important for women to be heard, but they need to speak up, I think, at the time it's happening. And I have to say, you know, I'm a mother. I have a son. I have 2 grandsons now. So, you know, and how you raise them matters. You know, they've been raised in a household where they've seen a professional mother and that sort of thing. So I think also how you raise your sons and your grandsons, all that really matters too. And to communicate, I think, you know, how to deal with women. But I do worry about being overly sensitive about this, such that you know, I actually worry a little bit about women. I think are much better communicating with each other. I see that, you know, for my son, he struggled a little bit over the years, and you know that there aren't the level of networks and so forth on some level for young men in this country, and so I worry a little bit about that as well as we talk about this Me Too movement too. Because I do think most men are not looking to, you know,
Be inappropriate.
But we have to help them with it, and we have to, I think, be the right models with it as well. So,
And I think it's important. It's kind of created a bit of a negative overlay because we're seeing women more as victims than as I think they should be seen as heroes in many ways. And many of these women suffered when companies didn't have an outlet for problems that happened. And so now I think we do, and I think we need to clean up a bit and recognize we've cleaned the basement and move on and do it right going forward. And that, I think that'll be really important, but not seeing women as victims. I think that's a negative overlay.
Any other Anybody else? Okay. So I'm going to end then with asking each of you, there's been a lot of talk, I think, at this conference and at other conferences about the challenges and the opportunities facing individual companies, facing the industry as a whole. We have a lot going on right now, and there's even more to come as we start to get into 5G. As we get more and more spectrum online, there's as always in this industry, there is a lot of change. So I wonder if each of you can talk about maybe one challenge and one opportunity that you think your company is going to be facing in the near term. Lauren, can I start with you?
Sure. I was thinking, hopefully an integration, right? I guess from where I sit, expanding the breadth and focus of traditionally being mobile carrier and bringing new business lines to that and adjusting the organization accordingly.
Okay. Amy?
While it's an issue now, I think it's going to continue to be an issue in that spectrum, and particularly what we do in the U.S. to think about ourselves competing globally, and how we approach that is going to be a significant impact to all of us in this room, and our success, and then the economic impact that it has on the U.S. and making sure we make good long-term decisions related to spectrum. For the benefit of many constituents, and certainly the audience in this room is super important and challenging.
Maureen?
For GCI, a converged network is both our challenge and our opportunity. We are luckily uniquely situated with the technologies that we provide, including backhaul, so we are well positioned for the future, but still trying to navigate what that actually looks like. And I would actually just like to add one other comment, that my dream would be that someday we wouldn't need a panel like this, that this would be an irrelevant panel.
Well, for me, a challenge and an opportunity, I think, is getting to 5G. I think it's both. And again, you won't be surprised to hear me say this, but the merger of Sprint and T-Mobile is a big part of that. And so, that's going to be both a challenge and an opportunity as we move to 5G, trying to deploy everywhere and anywhere 5G going forward. And I think spectrum, I would agree with Amy, spectrum policy is really going to play into that. It very much is a global economy, and so, and spectrum policy is global. And so there's a lot of activity in that space. It's really going to be important, because other countries around the world are able just to magically make a lot more spectrum available than we are. And that, as we're competing with them, that's a big concern. So it's going to be something we're going to be working on hard.
Okay. Michele?
And I would agree with what everybody said, especially Kathleen, and I would add to that Internet of Things being another area where you really see the convergence of some of these different issues on a platform basis, including the spectrum and 5G issues, but also privacy and cybersecurity and competition coming together in a new way. And the cross-border influence, we saw it in Europe with GDPR passing, and then US companies having to adjust if they do cross-border work. So I think we're going to see more of that, and we're going to see tightly regulated spaces like healthcare versus automotive versus what we've seen in the US for wireless, which has been less regulated. So you're going to see a lot of new issues emerge, which will be interesting.
Well, thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you to our audience. Thank you to CCA.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks. Good job. Good job. Thank you. Appreciate it. Hey, Kelly. Thank you. Hey, Michele. Take care. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly, for chairing the panel, and thank you to the panelists. We have some announcements. First, I'd like to note that T-Mobile sponsored the event, but we also have the T-Mobile 5G Tech Experience truck in the exhibit hall. So if you get a chance, go by and visit. They give you a tour there. T-Mobile's vision of 5G is sort of interesting. Hope you have a chance to look at it. Alert somebody lost a cell phone, a personal communication device, found and is now up front. We'll let you on your own time come up and collect your phone. I don't know how it got turned in, but FYI, I don't think you want to be without it. So before I get to some of the other announcements, we would hope you would take the time to use the app and give us an evaluation of the panel and all the other panels that you're in today. Remember, you get big points for doing that, and someone is going to win a plane ticket to anywhere in the United States and cash for using the app. So I hope you'll take a trip around the app. We do use the information. It helps us identify what things you liked and you didn't like, so please communicate with us on that. The exhibit hall is open from 1 till 6 p.m. tonight, and please make sure you attend the happy hour from 4 till 6 in that same exhibit hall, which is always a chance to have new contacts. Now, speaking of the exhibit hall happy hour, we're going to do something different and sort of radical. We're going to have an exciting opportunity for 2 exhibitors. They don't know who they are right now, to be lucky exhibitor sponsors and happy hour honorary sponsors. So if you want to get free drink tickets, which I know you'll like to get free drink tickets, you're going to have to go to these booths. And Lucy's going to come up. Now, you can't stand. You got to come up here so that everybody can see that you're drawing these. This is all random drawing. And these 2 exhibitors will be the honorary happy hour sponsors, and you go to their booth to get your drink ticket, and the first winner is?
It is Affirmed Networks, booth 217.
Affirmed Networks, booth 217. All right, and the next lucky winner is?
Quorum, booth 418.
Quorum, booth 418. All right, you have your marching orders, you get your free tickets. Great way to get some of the new innovative exhibitors and booths some acknowledged. So go see everyone else in the hall. So that's also happening this afternoon. I encourage you to check out some of the remaining seminars that are taking place. Really great topics. And tomorrow, we will have a phenomenal program lined up for you. Among the highlights, we're going to have Charlie Ergen, the co-founder and chairman of DISH, and he'll join us for a fireside chat early in the morning. And we also have an outstanding panel of experts to talk about the promise of 5G. And this is moderated by Shaitan Sharma, as you know, a renowned analyst. He does global consulting, and it'll be really interesting to hear this panel of experts talk about the 5G. And in closing, again, I'd say big thanks to our Pinnacle sponsors, Ericsson, Huawei, Interrupt Technologies, Nokia, Sprint, T-Mobile, and TNS. And I hope you have a productive, enjoyable afternoon. Thank you so very much. See you tomorrow morning.